everyone. This is July Spiritual Chat. My special guest is Melissa.
Hi, guys.
And we are going to talk about Death Doula and grieving. And also other random stuff. Just questions that have come through. So as you see this video, if you're not able to join the live, it will be there. I know who is meant to see it will see it. And we welcome anybody that comes in. But Melissa, tell me about yourself.
So I am a beautiful, inspiring, passionate, joyful woman. I happen to be a death doula. I sort of quantify myself as a spiritual advisor because I use a number of different modalities to hold space for individuals who are healing. So I am a Reiki master. I use crystal energy healing. I read tarot and oracle cards, Lenormand. I do witchy things, candle magic, kitchen magic. But my passion is the death doula work.
So when did you first hear about Death Doula, and when did you get started into it?
For me, death doula work was actually something that I did without knowing what I was doing. And so when I was 19, I met a man who would become my husband.
Oh, okay.
Who had epilepsy.
Okay.
And when he was diagnosed, his doctor essentially said, one day you could have a seizure that's so bad you don't wake up. So he kind of lived with death in the sidecar. And so when I started dating him, we started having conversations about what I should do if he had a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
And they eventually evolved into conversations about what I should do if he died. And then we got married and had a family, and we continued to have those conversations. And it was interesting because he ran across an article in a newspaper about a gentleman with a Harley Davidson trike that had a wagon behind it, a clear wagon behind it, and it was called The Last Ride, RYDE. And you used him in place of a hearse. And for years he would say, I want that. Remember, I want that. And he would say, I want to be buried in a pine box. He would say things like, I want to be buried in camo. I want to be on a hill. And so in 2009, when he passed away, I had a death plan. I knew what was supposed to be happening. And as you're going through those first few days of being numb and trying to get things done, I had a plan to work from. And one of the greatest compliments that I got was, this service was so him. And later, when I was trying to figure out who I was without him, I began to develop some of my esoteric gifts. And I ran into the concept of a death doula, and I realized, oh, I've kind of been doing that already. I went through a number of classes and got a number of different certifications before I finally came across an actual training where I could become a death doula. And I did that first. The first time I went through that training was 2020, 2021. And shortly after that, my daughter-in-law passed away. And so I found myself helping my son using those death doula tools. After he was on his feet, I went back to the trainer and said, can I go back through? And the nice thing about it is she lets you come back through, and you're a senior doula, and so you're supporting the new doulas as they're processing through all of the emotions that come up in that training. And this time when I came through, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do with that training. And I have a co-host that helps me host the Tooele Death Cafe, and it is on the second Tuesday of each month in the Tooele Marketplace.
Okay.
From 6 to 8 o'clock. And a death cafe is really just a gathering of people over tea, cake, food. And you come together for a couple hours and you talk about death and dying in a place that with people that don't hold judgment and can hold space and offer support.
That's awesome.
How
How long have you been doing that?
We actually started October 14th of last year. So
awesome.
We're approaching our 1-year anniversary. We also support a death cafe that occurs here in Mill Creek. And it happens on the last Wednesday of every month. And it's from 6 to 8. And it's at the Lotus Center, which is off of 45th South and 7th East.
See, I've lived in Mill Creek my whole time. In Marie area, I never heard of this. So if someone is looking for information, like where would they find this information? Is it on like your social medias, posters? I mean, how is it advertised?
So the Lotus Center advertises their own death cafe. I have my personal Facebook page, but I also have Melissa Joy Death Doula Facebook page, which is where you'll find the Tooele Death Cafes.
Okay.
And my co-host and I, we are working on developing a workshop where you can actually come in and sit down and actually create a death plan.
Awesome.
So, one of the common questions I get asked is, what's a death plan? What do I need to consider in a death plan? Because most people think of money. And really a death plan is, Rachel, if you were to pass away and you'd be able to be in your home, is there certain music you want to have played?
So these are like wishes as I'm days away from my...
But you're planning it now.
Okay.
We're talking while you're here, healthy
Okay.
and happy, sane, sound mind.
Okay.
You're saying, you know what, I really want a purple blanket. I really want 80s music. I want to have...
She has me nailed, everybody. I have a purple blanket and I love 80s music.
I want a coffee bar in the room for the people who come to see me. Whatever it is that you want.
Okay.
But then you can also put in there the things like, I want a DNR, or maybe you don't. Maybe you want everything.
No,
done.
when I'm dead, I'm dead. I don't want any life measures because I know when it's my time, it's my time. I don't want anything to be prevented. So like if I go in for surgeries and I'm going under, darn straight.
Okay.
Do not attempt anything on me. Let me be.
See, and those are the kinds of things that you need to plan, put in writing, and someone that can actually, speak up and say, hey, this is what she wants.
Do you feel like those, I know like the DNR, right?
Mm-hmm.
The DNR has to be like notarized, or it has to be witness signed, correct? And they'll keep them with the hospitals.
The DNR and like advance directives, they do. But just a general plan about the fact, I want a purple blanket. I want 80s music.
So more of the comforting stuff.
I don't want my lips to be chapped and it's got to be Burt's Bees, or whatever it is that helps you be comfortable and control your own environment, your own experience. I also feel like that is the time now, to gather up all of the information so that it's all in one place. Where do you have accounts? Where do you, and what kinds of things do you want done with those accounts? Who's going to take care of your pets? If you were to be in the hospital to be checked into the ER today, what kind of information would I need to carry out your wishes? Do we need to make a phone tree? Do we need to, who do you have a trust? Do you have medical directives? And who's got access to those? Someone needs to know that information. And then for me, because my ordinary job is as a stockbroker, well, let's go back. I actually can help with things as you transition, such as blessings and drummings and that type of thing. And then I can help with I can help your family with making arrangements. If you want a celebration of life, if you are going to be cremated, if you're going to be donated, have your body donated to science or have a service. And then because my ordinary business is as a stockbroker, I can help with the financial things that come after. You're going to need 6 copies of your death certificate. I know what the forms are going to ask for and the language that they're going to use. And so that is the thing that makes me unique from my colleague doulas. I have my partner who does the death cafes. Her niche is legacy plans. She does fantastic things with knowing who to contact if they want to use your clothing to make a quilt, or who to work with to get videos made from your pictures or music and those types of things. So we all kind of have our own little niche.
So I know you said it was about 2020, 21 that you went back to become the senior death doula. How many have you helped with since that time frame?
Right now, it's been a handful, and it's been mostly people that I know.
Okay.
When I went through the first time, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with the information, and then my daughter-in-law passed away. Mm-hmm. She and my son had only been married for 5 weeks.
Was it a freak accident or something?
She had virus. And she had some health issues beforehand that they'd been married 5 weeks, and it was a week before she turned 27. And so I didn't go into practice at that point in time because I was focused on being his support system.
Yeah.
So when I felt like he was doing things more on his own 2 feet, I went back through and said, let's refresh all of this. And when I went back through, I knew, okay, yep, I'm supposed to have this as a practice, and I'm going to do it this way. So we started Death Cafes in Tooele, which is a community that's about 40 miles outside of to the west of Salt Lake, and they don't have anything like it. So we felt like they were kind of underserved. And my co-host, she has family ties in that area, and I lived there. So we went to the Tooele Marketplace, which used to be the old folks' home and the old hospital. And they
not the one that
shops.
They turned into a hospital, like a haunted house.
Yeah. The other half,
okay.
The other half of the building is the haunted house. The part that used to be the hospital is the haunted house. The part that used to be the rest home or the old folks' home, they converted it into shops.
Oh.
And so these are people that instead of paying the prices that it would cost to have a storefront on Main Street, they can have a storefront in this marketplace. And so I went to the owners and said, would you be willing to let us host an event here once a month? Mm-hmm. And here are the details. And they said yes.
That's awesome.
So,
how many people attend those?
We've had as many as 6. We've had as few of just 1 or 2. And I think a lot of the challenge that we face out there is that people get confused by the term death cafe. They don't necessarily know what it means. They actually originated in England, and they use words like salon and cafe to mean different things than we do here in the U.S. But we use the term death cafe so that we can be under the umbrella of all of the death cafes here in the States. That you can actually go to deathcafe.com and search Utah, and you will find our death cafe.
Oh, okay.
And so
on that, does it have a list of all the death doulas in Utah?
It does not have a list of the doulas. It just has a list of the cafe.
Wouldn't that be amazing to have a list?
That would be fantastic.
With their picture and then the family that feels drawn to a particular person?
That would be fantastic.
There's your idea.
There we go. That's my homework.
Like, gee, Rachel, thanks. Bring me in for a chat and you send me with homework. No, I'm just kidding. I do that to everybody.
So we have done, we do the Facebook events. We have our information on Eventbrite, and essentially we reach out to the community and just we do flyers around town. And my son has actually walked through like the 4th of July parade, the homecoming parade, the Santa Claus parade, handing out flyers and,
that's awesome.
And stuff like that. So yeah.
Do you feel, because I know like some people, when they hear the word death or, they get a diagnosis where it's not so good, it's like they go into panic mode and they're scared of that.
I find that is more common than not. I feel like when I say that I'm a death doula and I explain what it is, that I empower the dying to control their death experience, I get a lot of, isn't that morbid? And the reality is, from the first breath that we take, we are that much closer to dying. And to me, if you talk about it, you take away some of the fear. And in my experience, because I had a plan to work from to get me through those first few days, then I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to think. I could just grieve. And to me, that's the greatest gift. In my family, I was the one who handled the finances. So I had actually created a folder called In Case I Die, so that my husband would know what to do if I were to ever be hit by a bus or whatever. And instead, it was me that was pulling out that folder and making all the phone calls and doing all the things. But I wouldn't have been able to do all of that if I didn't have the structure in place beforehand.
Do you feel like you were intuitive, like just in knowing what you needed to have ready?
I do. I feel like that was one of those things. When I took my first kitchen witch class and somebody asked me about, were you the little girl that was stirring up the mud puddles with the twigs and everything? And, all of a sudden I started going, oh, wait, I do stir clockwise. And, oh, yeah, I do use these herbs for this reason. It was those things that came naturally, and I just didn't know that I was doing them. I feel like Death Doula was the same thing. I was doing some things naturally, and I just didn't know why I was doing them or what to call it. I feel like a lot of people come to their gifts that way. They don't necessarily know what it is or what to call it until they have a reason to look at it in a new light.
Crazy. We did get a question.
Okay.
And I know you covered some of it.
Okay.
But aside from the life insurance, what can one do while alive to help make things easier for the loved ones when they do pass away?
I think the biggest thing is transparency. Death brings out bad behavior.
Oh, don't even go there. It's horrible behavior.
Death brings out bad behavior. So the more transparent you can be in advance, the less it is for the people that have that bad behavior to be able to do those things. So, meet with a death doula. Talk with them about what kind of information you need to have gathered. Put thought into what things make you comfortable. And if there are people that I have to have this person, or my pets have to be allowed into the room, or maybe it's this person causes chaos in my life and I don't care if they're a blood relative, they're not allowed to be in the room, whether I'm at home or whether I'm in the hospital or whatever, they're just not allowed. And so put plans in place.
Does a death doula also help with helping the individual like plan their own funeral and also get into the details of like casket, being buried, ashes spread?
I can have those conversations, and
which items in the household go to what particular people?
Absolutely, I can have those conversations, and I can help you put together an inventory. And if you want, I can go with you to a mortuary, and we can have conversations together. And then you don't feel like you're being pressured or overloaded with information. Maybe you visit the mortuary and you gather all the information, and you sit down with someone like me and say, okay, what does this really mean? I had someone that wanted to, it was like, I want to be an organ donor. Mm-hmm. And she goes, and I just assumed that they would just take care of my body after that. And I went, nope, they don't. The family still has to have instructions about how to dispose of the body. And so she started, she's here from Australia. So she started calling her kids to find out if they wanted any of her ashes. And so that she would know whether to,
plan ahead for that. That's awesome. That's good planning.
And or if they were even worried about it. And so those types of conversations happen because she started asking questions. She heard about hydromation, which is
I don't know what that is.
It's a water-based cremation. And it's more environmentally friendly. It's relatively new. It's very niche. And so a little more expensive than just your traditional kind of cremation. But she started asking questions about that. And so we started talking to the coordinator at the local mortuary and got additional information. And then she started down that journey. Which I was proud to be a part of.
That's awesome. To go back to that person's question, I want to add some insight.
Okay.
My significant other, his parents, about 1.5 years, 2 years before he passed, they dropped each child this book. And, well, it was a file book. And it had it down to, this is where we're buried. This is the color of our caskets. This is what I want to be worn. Like, I want cake. This is the kind of, like, everything in detail. Mm-hmm. And one of the siblings had a complete meltdown. Like, it just completely bothered her. But I was like, dude, trust me. After I went through my mom's whole fiasco of her mm-hmm. passing, I was like, you want something like this.
Yep.
Because nobody can argue it.
Yep.
And my boyfriend's like, yeah, okay. And then I will tell you this, if you have someone that's being a caretaker for you, and you'll probably, because you were the caretaker for your husband,
Right.
You have to have those difficult conversations, and it sucks like dog crap.
I remember, again, he and I had conversations over the years.
Yeah.
And I remember him sitting in the hospital, and he had blood clots in his lungs. And the normal procedure for blood clots in the lungs is to give a huge dose of blood thinner and then back it down to a therapeutic level. Well, they would give him a dose of blood thinners and he would start coughing up blood. And there was actually a lobe in his left lung that was bleeding every time that they would give him blood thinners. And they tried different blood thinners. They tried starting low and bringing him up, and it wasn't helping. He spent 14 days in the hospital and had multiple procedures to try and stop that. And his mom would come to visit, and he would say, "Mom, I want that that's right, I want that motorcycle thing." And she would go, "We don't talk about those things." And I looked at her and I was like, the hell we don't. And if we're not going to talk about them now, then when do you expect to talk about them? Because he's not a healthy man at this juncture. And I feel like the older that people are, they go one of two ways. It's like almost extreme. It's, I don't want to talk about it. You can deal with it when I'm gone, or here, let me get all these ducks in a row. And they start to do the death purge, where they actually start to give away things because they want to make sure that it goes to the person that they want it to go to.
Yeah.
And so, I can help in either way, in either format, in either situation.
I just know, because with my mom, I was doing her bills for her. So I had a pretty good idea on her monthly expenses, when her meds arrived, all that fun crap. Got some surprises after she passed, though. She took out cash advances while gambling the week before her birthday. I mean, before her death, because we were celebrating her birthday. Like, nice, Mom, thanks. But I knew that she had a death bag, and for whatever reason, I could not find that bag. And so I knew which mortuary and stuff, but then we found the bag, and I was opening the bag, and I'm not practicing LDS. And my boyfriend's family is very LDS. So I was like, look at these items in this bag. Everything's correct, right? The apron, the shoes. And he's like, yeah. Even confirmed it with his mom. Took the bag over to the mortuary. Mortuary called me that night. They're like, the dress is missing. And I saw an image of my mom in the basement of the morgue looking at all the new dresses and being like, I want a new dress.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, just charge a new dress. I was like, that would totally be her. But no, I know we came into, even though she picked like the mortuary and stuff, because she didn't finalize everything, it was like, is she buried or cremated? And I was like, I'm the one who sees her weekly. She wanted to be cremated. But being a child and having to deal with a parent's death, I would have loved like a checklist. Even though all the telltale signs were there. Like she was giving me warnings. She's like, she passed like a few days after her birthday, but she's like, this is my last birthday. I'm going to go out with a bang. I'm going to gamble to my heart's content. Yeah.
She knew what she wanted.
I know. Hi, welcome to the chat. If you have any questions for Melissa, oh, they went out. So if you catch anything up there, let me know.
Good.
No, with my significant other, that was hard because we were having those discussions. Like, I remember one night, and this is what death doulas do, I'm assuming as well. He asked me, he's like, I'm going to hell. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, I'm going to hell. I've been a sinner, I've done drugs, and la 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 la, and I'm living in sin. I'm like, no.
Wow.
And I could not comfort him. I was like, if that's what you think hell, no. I was like, hell's living on earth right now.
So,
and there was different beliefs.
And as a death doula, my role is not to get into the weeds of religion. It really isn't. And my role is not to pass judgment. My role is simply to be a witness for the passing of a life. And to be a witness for grief. My role is not to fix. I'm just holding space so that you have a
peaceful transition.
Well, not only that you have a peaceful transition for the person that's dying, but for the family that's behind, I can provide that, person that you can come and talk to, that you can, and you don't feel like you're being a burden. And you don't feel like you're bringing everybody else down, because that's part of my role is to witness the gift of grief. Because really, grief is love that doesn't have a direction, doesn't have a place to go. And until you figure out where that's going to land and how that feels within you, then you need a safe haven to express whatever comes up. And that's part of what I do. As a reader, a tarot reader, I was at a psychic event, and I had a woman sit next to me and sit across from me and say, "You're a death doula. Tell me how that works." And I kind of explained a little bit, and she said, "Can you help me feel comfortable in my body?" And I asked her what she meant, and she said, "I am a survivor of suicide attempts. I am a survivor of domestic abuse that had almost resulted in her death. And she was a survivor of rape. And she was like, my spirit floats outside my body. And God keeps telling me I need to get back in my body." And I didn't make any kind of judgment. I just said, well, let's get you back in your body. And we started talking about, when you make a true statement, where do you feel that in your body?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my true statement is, my name is Melissa Joy. And I know exactly where I feel that in my body. And so I asked her to make a true statement and notice where she feels it in her body. And then I asked her to make an untrue statement. And where does she feel that in her body? And then I began to ask her things like, where do you feel safe? Where do you feel it in your body when you're safe? Where do you feel it in your body when you're loved? And by the end of the session, she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And I had suggested that she track that a little bit in a journal. Or
like if her soul ever leaves her body again from the trauma and stuff she's experienced.
Because knowing, hey, this is where I feel sorrow. This is where I feel something that's not true. That's something that doesn't belong to me. Then she had said, "Oh, I'm going to put this on a graph." And I said, that could turn into a beautiful piece of artwork. As a doula, a death doula, my role is to help you figure out where you feel grief in your body and how to hold it, and then what to do with it.
So with you losing your husband, where did you feel grief in your body?
For me, it's in my lungs. lungs. I feel like
Okay.
I can't breathe. And the other thing was that I noticed for myself was whenever I would get to the point that I could breathe again, a new layer would appear, and all of a sudden I was back to not being able to breathe. Well, I don't know how or why it relates, but every time I would discover a new layer of grief, I would do something different with my hair. I would cut it shorter, or
Oh.
I would color it. I went black, I went blonde, I went red, and so I would cut it shorter and shorter. And it was just like, as I discovered new levels of grief, I was like, I need to do something different with my hair.
Did you feel that was you trying to, because I know that you said with the loss of him, you were trying to figure out who you were without him.
Yep, I do. There's a lot of
Second. Hi, whoever's in the chat. This is Melissa Joy. She is a Death Doula. If you have any questions regarding Death Doula or anything regarding that, or spiritual or grief or anything, put it in the chat and we'll answer your question for you.
I feel like there's a lot of energy that we hold in our hair. It holds a lot of our emotions. And there are many, many cultures where the actual hair cutting when you're in the grieving process. Native American cultures, samurai cultures, Celtic cultures, those traditions, that is something that's actually pretty common, is to cut your hair when you're in grief.
Huh. So I'm trying to think if I cut my hair.
Our hair is it's an extension of our energetic body. And so that's why it holds a lot of that. It holds a lot of that energy. It takes time to grow out. And so when you release, then it is one of the things that we can control. And that's why it's a common practice.
Interesting. Oh, it's Sam. Hey, Sam, what's happening?
Sam is my new buddy.
This is the time the trash talk, Sam. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'm just kidding, Sam. Hey, Sam, you got a question for Melissa regarding death and grieving? Anything?
Apparently not it.
Yeah, Sam, we have discussed too. He's my second option for taking over my cats if something was to happen to me. I haven't gone into details on it, but
I think that's actually,
because I don't give a crap about anything except my cats.
So Jennifer Martin, who we both know really well, she has birds.
Yeah.
And she has a similar sentiment. She says, as long as the birds are taken care of, I don't care what else happens. So I think one of the highest compliments you can bestow on someone is to make them the caretaker for your pets. For your fur babies or your feather babies or your scaled babies, whatever.
Exactly. I was just listening for now. Did you, I know it's a little bit different, but for listeners out there that will come upon this, after your husband passed, and it's a little different from my scenario, did you, when you're trying to find yourself out of the shadows of him, of finding out you again, did you make changes around your house, like get a new bed, do different clothing?
So in our household, I was actually the working partner, and he was a stay-at-home dad. And so I don't necessarily feel like I was in his shadow. He was more likely in mine. And that was kind of where he felt comfortable. So for me, it was finding out who I was without having that built-in support to go and do work and school and all of the other things that I had in my life at that time, and knowing that my house and my pets and my children were taken care of. And so the first year, I felt like I was kind of numb, but it was interesting to me because everybody would check in around important dates and around holidays and just check in to see how you're doing. Well, the second year, I wasn't quite as numb, and less people checked in. By the third year, I was trying to figure out what still worked, what traditions still worked, what pieces of the puzzle still fit, and people had gone back to their lives. And so, and then by the fourth year, that was when I actually had started to date and bring new people into my space, which created a whole other challenge for me, because how did I continue to honor him and the life that we built and the values that we had, and still have someone else in my here and now present. So I feel like when I was a little girl, I knew exactly what I wanted my life to look like. I knew exactly what everything was supposed to be, and I had a picture. When I reached a point that we had 80 to 90% of that picture, my decisions were based on, is a 5-day work week better or a 4-day work week better? And then when he died, it just shattered. And I think I spent the next 10 years or so picking up pieces and trying to figure out if they fit into a jigsaw puzzle. And it wasn't until without knowing what that picture was supposed to look like anymore. And it wasn't until about 10 years in that I realized, it's not a jigsaw puzzle. It's a mosaic. It doesn't have to have a pattern. And between the pieces, I lay gold. And so I feel like, yes, I did try to make changes or figure out what was still working in those early years. For me, one of the biggest helps in my grief journey, I had 2 journals. I had one that was all of the memories that would come up. And that one I intend to have bound and given to my boys, so that they have a record of those memories.
Okay.
For the other journal that I had was sort of conversations with Dan. It was like, I wish I'd had you buried face down so I could kick your ass. I shouldn't have to learn how to use a snowblower. That was your job. Or how come no one can teach me how to program my sprinklers? Everybody just wants to do it for me. Why didn't you teach me how to do this? And things like, I woke up this morning and I heard breathing, and for a second I forgot you had passed away. Turns out your dog likes to sleep on your side of the bed. So that's what that journal was. And that was very helpful to have a place to put that kind of thing, whether it was I'm pissed at you or whether it was I miss you.
Because you're releasing those emotions.
Exactly. It gave me a place to put things. That's process.
So the question that was asked, would you feel that loss and grief would be similar to a tower moment?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that is the energy that card, the tarot card, holds for me, is that feeling of everything that I thought I wanted or expected or was building being blown to smithereens. That's the energy that the tower card has for me.
represents for you.
And for the longest time, I had said tarot card is my least favorite card in the tarot deck. And actually, it was a reading with Sam and a conversation with Ken that brought me to the realization, oh, that's what that energy is. And then I realized, oh yeah, well, after a while, I got to the point that I was, building a mosaic, putting together a mosaic, and then I thought, oh, I just need to look at the card that falls after. And Ken looked at me and said, well, what card does fall after that? And I went, I meant in the reading, what card falls after that? That's what's being built. And the card that falls after that in the tarot deck is the star. And he said, what energy is the star hold for you? And the star for me is the energy of me being a little girl going, first star I see tonight, wish I may, whatever.
Yeah.
It's that hope. It's the wish. It's the ideal. And I feel like it makes perfect sense that would come after the tower, because you reach a point after being in that rubble that you start to see, you start to see a goal or see an ideal, something that you want. You start to have hope. And then once you have hope, once you have an ideal, then you can start to build. You can start to look at what steps do I need to take to get to that ideal.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I love the tower card. I don't know about you guys. I absolutely love it.
My feelings towards that card have definitely changed in the last 6 months.
I'm like, bring it on!
Yeah, I was like, I know what the meaning of it is, but the energy of it just was overwhelming. And it wasn't till, again, the reading came together at the same time as the conversation. And all of a sudden I went, how come I've been reading tarot since I was 19, and at 55 I'm still learning new things about my relationship to the cards?
Only you can answer.
I hope that I continue to do that, but maybe not so rough next time.
So you were reading cards at 19. What spiritual gifts did you have? Or what's your earliest memory of a spiritual gift?
Well, my earliest memory or experience with a spiritual gift was actually the fact that I would make my dog chase out the shadow figures that were in my room, that was in my room at night. But I didn't know that that's what it was. I didn't know that's what I was doing. And I named all the animals and talked to them like animism. And so I named all the animals that were on the farm, like the chicken was Cinderella, and all of these great things. And I was the little girl that was in the mud puddle with the sticks, stirring it up, making potions. So I've always had those things, but I didn't grow up supported with those gifts. When I was 19, Dad worked nights, and so I was alone in the evenings, and the next door neighbor read tarot, and I was like, I want to learn. And so she taught me to memorize the cards.
Oh, okay.
And then she taught me, and then we would go to the mall, and she would point out someone and say, tell me their story. And I didn't necessarily connect those. And because she taught me by teaching me how to memorize the cards, it was not everything was accurate. And so one of the pieces of information that she passed down to me that was not accurate was you shouldn't read tarot when you are pregnant. And I believed her. I didn't know any better.
Why?
Baby's energy, cards, with everything else. I don't know.
Huh.
But so I put my cards away. And when my kids got a little older, I said to my husband, I want to start reading again. And I want this specific deck. I want the Medicine Woman deck. And so he bought it for me. But I was working, and I was trying to do the mom thing by being a scout leader and all of those things. And so I just didn't have the time to work with any of those gifts. And then Dad died. And about 6 months afterwards, I had had dinner with my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. And we were in a restaurant. We went to a Mexican restaurant. And to me, Mexican means margaritas. And the compromise that I had always made when my husband was alive, because his family was very religious, was that I didn't drink alcohol around them. So we're at the Mexican restaurant, and the waitress asked me what I want, and I told her I wanted a margarita. Well, then I hear everybody else around the table placing their order. They get down to my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law orders water, and my brother-in-law wants a root beer, and I hear my husband say, you should change your drink. You really should change your drink. You know you should change your drink. And I said, if you want me to change my drink, you can get your ass down here. So until then, there's no one else here to make me happy. And that's what I call my epiphany moment. Because after that, I went, what does make me happy? And that was when I started to find classes. And I took a lot of beginners classes because I didn't know what my interests were or what my gifts were. And I would go to a class and I would go, yeah, that's not my jam. Or I would say, oh, I really love this, but I want something more in depth.
Yeah.
And so that was where I discovered what my talents were, what my gifts were, and what classes that I wanted to take. And I actually found someone who was a mentor that I walked in with a couple of pages, legal pad pages of topics that said, I want to learn this.
That's awesome.
And he helped me either learn it or find resources. And in that journey, that's when I found the Death Doula programs.
So what's your thoughts and feelings about teaching Death Doula to others?
I would actually love to do that at some point. I am not certain that right now is that moment for me, and that's because I have some things in my ordinary life, in my ordinary job that are changing. Once I get settled into the new position, which I start on Monday, then I can look at...
Into slowly transitioning.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So, but that would be an amazing opportunity, is to, help men and women that want to normalize conversations about that.
Yeah. I feel like you're very structured.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have already a book. I'm going to say it's somewhat put together. You just don't know it yet. But it's in detail of how you would teach.
That does not surprise me, but it's like waiting for me to...
Like, I'm seeing it in my head right now, and I'm like, She just doesn't have all the tabs in. And they're...
I love that. Right now I'm working, as I said, with my co-hosts in the Death Cafes to be able to create a book for our clientele to be able to create a death plan. And here's the planning stages, here's what I want in the transition stages, and here's the information that you'll need in the post stages. And so
that would be really cool to get that on Amazon.
we're working to put that together. I love that idea.
I guess I should have also told you human design. What's your human design?
I have to look at my phone for that, but I am actually.
Hey, Sam, what am I on human design?
I am actually a lot like Esther. We have
A
very
projector.
similar gates. Yes, we have similar gates, but she's Olaf. I'm Mufasa. I'm her husband. I have the same gates as her husband. It's so funny.
I'm the generator manifester. I'm the genie in the bottle, and I pop out and grant wishes. And pop ideas. And then I go back into my lamp, and I go back into my little hibernation, and then I pop out again.
See, and that's why I need people like you in my space, because I'll come up with ideas, but then I have the limiting belief that I challenge every time I come up with an idea is that I have to know all of the steps, and so when I have your energy in my
I'm
space,
the fool. If you have to give me a tarot card, I am like the fool, the star, and the empress. I will jump off. Just it's my wild card attitude. I don't care. I'll deal with consequences or patches in the road later.
But see, your energy gives me new perspective for what I think I have as a roadblock, and when I have that new perspective, then I can have a hangman moment. So the hangman to me is actually one of my favorite cards in the deck, and the reason why is it has the energy of that meme with the little girl that's got the tutu, that she's like 2 or 3 or whatever, and she's got her head down on the ground looking between her cowboy boots, and underneath it usually says something like, sometimes you have to talk to a 2-year-old to understand how to see the world again. And that's, like I said, when somebody pops in with a different perspective and they throw up a possibility that I hadn't considered, then all of a sudden I have that hangman moment where I go, oh, well, what if we turn the world upside down and we do this and this and this, and then I figure out how to put that in my structure, in my little structured world.
Awesome.
Which is why we make good friends.
Heck yeah. So I got asked a question, and I still don't even know how to answer it all the way, other than I just know I know. That's it. I grew up with it. But have you had, okay, so someone asked me, what clairs have I had to have additional training on or classes on how to develop?
So for me, I'm clairaudient. I will hear snippets of conversation, or music will come to me. Or I will have things come out of my mouth that I don't know where they came from, but but it's about hearing it. But human design wise, I'm supposed to be sight. And so I spent a little time with Esther in the light circle
Classes.
Yes, and she will give like a theme. So it'll be like a movie, and so when she's pulling names out of the cup, and I start to get flashes of movies, it usually has audio or it usually has music with it. Well, the night that we were doing music, I was getting flashes from movies that went with that music. And
okay.
I was like, oh wait, I do have both. And so, and I know things that I don't know why I know. I just know I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known that all of my life. But I don't think it was necessarily that I needed to develop the the site. It was more that I needed to recognize when I was using it in tandem with with the Claire that I know is my dominant. Um, so the one that I would find really interesting is taste.
You've never had a taste?
I've never had a taste. I get smells.
Okay.
In fact, my late husband comes to me as the smell of campfire smoke.
Why? Did he campfire a lot?
He liked to camp.
Oh, okay.
Camp and hunt, yes. And my grandmother comes to me as the smell of white cake, which is really interesting because my earliest memories of her were actually the fact that she would always have like cupcakes going or something. And she once told my mother that she wanted that to be a memory, a core memory of her, was, warm and comfort and something sweet. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes I think it's not, sometimes I think we don't have to develop them per se. We just have to become aware of when we're using them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I had, I don't like to be rushed by spirit. They still do that occasionally, but one of them, it was so funny because I heard the jingling of the keys. I heard the footsteps approaching. And then it was like, whoosh, I felt it right next to me. And then I smelled it. And I was like, it still made me jump a little. And I was livid. And then I saw the flash of who it was. And I was like, and I hear, it was my uncle. He was laughing. He's like, I jingled my keys. Because I'm like, don't do that. I was like, you stink like alcohol. So I had like 4 Claires there, and I still got startled. I'd love to ask that. Hi, whoever joined the chat. This is Melissa. I'm Rachel. We're having a spiritual chat. We were discussing Death Doula. Now we're talking about different Claires. If you have a question that you would love to have answered or a viewpoint on it, enter it in the chat. We'd love to answer it for you.
So, tell me more about your significant other.
What do you want to know?
Well, tell me more about your grief experience.
So when you mentioned that you went numb, I was numb the whole time that he was, like, I was in autopilot. Like, I knew, okay, we got to take you to the hospital. You fell down. You have a goose egg. I had like I called it his hospital package. Because, he cold. So we had a heated blanket. We had his pillow. We had his mask. We had his favorite socks, his slippers. Like, so I always had the backpack. It was very, how do I say this? My difficult part was we would have late night conversations.
Mm.
And some of it I didn't know how to answer. And I wasn't my true self in those 11 years. Like, he got a really good glimpse of it one night. So it was probably a year after my mom passed. And I had an Elvis phone in a hutch that belonged to my mom. And when the phone was plugged in or had batteries and someone was dialing it, it was an Elvis doll that would start shaking and moving and singing "You're Nothing But a Hound Dog." That went off one night in the hutch. And before I got the phone call, I was actually at my brother's house babysitting, and I saw the flash go across the room. And I was like, okay, someone just ran in the room. And then he called me. My phone started ringing. He's like, the Elvis phone is going off in the hutch. I was like, just tell my mom I'm not at home. I'll be home tomorrow, and then knock it off. It's making you uncomfortable. And he never questioned me about it until almost his last few weeks of living, then he's like, it's like he started putting two to two together on stuff. But because I would hide stuff. Like, that's scary.
Yes.
I mean, imagine if you're home alone and a phone's going off in a hutch and you know it's not plugged in and it doesn't have batteries in it. I would freak out too. But there was just questions I couldn't answer. And then he would make guilt trips on me. Like he would be like, I'm not dying because he would be like, I would go tonight if I knew you were already there. On the other side.
Wow.
He's like, can we just go for a drive and crash the car? And I was like, I'm not dying. I'm not ready to end my life. So that was hard.
I remember when Dan was in the hospital, one of the conversations that we had that was really hard. They had told me there was a possibility they would need to remove part of his lung. And most of the time, that is a surgery that lung cancer patients have. And I was like, okay. And so he and I were having a conversation because we had those kinds of conversations. And I said, if we reach that point, what do you want me to do? And he looked at me and he goes, well, what are the chances of survival? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, if it's 25% or less, have them patch me up and send me home. I want to say my goodbyes. And he said, if it is 50%,
Mm-hmm.
I said, what if it's 50%? He goes, then you decide. So the next day, we're in that situation where they had life flighted him they'd taken him from one hospital to the other to Mountain West, the one on 53rd and State, whatever it is, IMC.
Yeah.
Because they have a heart and lung center there. And so I find myself having this conversation with the doctor going, what are the percentages? So I know whether to sign this or not. And he said, it's 50-50. If he survives the surgery, it's 50-50. He's going to walk out of here. And my mom said to me, it's always worth the chance. It's always worth the risk. So I signed everything. And I know there was a point in time in my grief journey where I felt a little guilty about the fact that I had signed everything, that I had been the one that, authorized them to do the surgery. And I had been the one to authorize them to pull the plugs and those kinds of things. And one of the nurses that rode the bus with me at that stage was like, okay, let's pretend for a minute that you'd had him patched up and sent home. What if he'd have died with just your boys at home? What if he'd have died alone? This way he was surrounded by family, mm-hmm. and he knew that he was loved and cared for, and that perspective shift was very helpful for me. One of the things that in my death doula journey, the trainer was going through one of her experiences as a death doula, where she said sometimes you just have to give the family permission to, tell the stories, or to have a drink, or what have you. Or for an older couple, it was like they'd asked them, what would you do if you were home? And they were like, we'd be having sex. And they were like, okay, we'll give you 45 minutes. We'll do it. Sometimes you just have to give them permission. And I thought, I wish someone had done that for me. I wish someone had told me it was okay to lay in bed next to him while he was in the hospital for those 14 days.
You didn't do that?
No.
I did that.
I wish someone had told me that I could have climbed up next to him after he died, and just laid there, or that I could have that I could have bathed him and blessed him. No one had ever told me I could do that. And I thought on my death doula journey, my journey to becoming a death doula, I thought that is what I want to be for the people that maybe are a little structured, follow the rules, and they don't know what all of the rules are, and they don't know how to break them. I want to be the person that says, you have permission to, hold your baby after they've passed away, or to have molds made of their hands, or to even, take the body home. Oh, the person dies at home. You don't have to call the coroner immediately.
No.
You can actually wake them in your own house. And so I wanted to be the person that lets someone know you have permission to do what's right for you and what's right for you.
I think you need to add that into your book. No, I do. I truly do. Because I would say my biggest struggle is, okay, so my significant other was an alcoholic. So his liver. They would do, where they stick, I can't recall. It starts with a P. Where they come in, stick him with a needle and drain the toxic fluid out of him.
Okay.
The doctors and the nurses would talk to him. Parasiticus, that's what it is.
Okay.
They would talk to him. And so like 2 days before his death, he's at his appointment, and the doctor's thanking him for showing up, and he looks horrible. I mean, he's a 50-something, 55-year-old man that looks like a 90-year-old that's barely walking.
Mm.
And so they're like, we're going to do a parasiticus on you. And they're like, we want to admit you to the hospital. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So the doctors would come out and they'd be like, he's refusing to be admitted. I was like, yeah. They're like, can't you talk to him? I was like, no.
His decision.
I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. And like his family would be like, he really needs to be admitted. I'm like, he's made his bed, he's laying in it, he's making his own decisions. I'm going to honor that. And I got so much grief over that shit.
I can imagine.
And so I think it was 2 nights before he passed. Someone made a phone call to him and was putting him on a guilt trip. And he's like, take me to the hospital. And I was like, okay, let's go. But I'll pack up your bag, but that person's driving you. And he's like, why won't you drive me? I said, because it's too late. There's nothing you can do. Your choice is you can die at home or you can die in the hospital. What's your choice? If you want to die at the hospital, I'm like putting my foot down. That person can come pick you up and take you.
It's good that you have a boundary.
That is, I know, I don't know where it came from. That was one of our first major blowout fights because I was just bawling. I was like, it's too late. You're done. I'm sorry. And the day before, hospice was in, and like the day before he died, hospice came over, and they were trying to do the NDR.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do you realize, because he's like, I want all measures. I was like, okay, you realize what happens when someone does CPR, right? You're going to have probably a broken rib and stuff. Do you want that? I was like, I was being graphic. I was like, this is what that means. I know you're somewhat here, but you're not here. I was like, you need to decide. I'm going to walk out of the room. You just have the discussion, and hospice will help you. But yeah, we were even having that discussion up to the night that he died, before he died the next morning. It was horrible.
Those are hard discussions, especially if you, again, don't know all the rules. Having a conversation about a DNR can be complex because you can say in a DNR whether or not you want no life-saving, measures taken, but you want medication. Or maybe you don't want the medication, but you want the life-saving measures. Or maybe you want life-saving measures for 12 minutes. If you can't revive me by then, then you're done. Or maybe it's 7 or what have you. But if you don't know what the possibilities are and you don't know what the rules are, then those conversations are made even harder.
There. And this is where going back to the person's question, what makes it easier? So he left all his funeral planning to his mother. She at least picked out the funeral home and the car, but no details. So after he passed, where was I 5 hours later? I was at the mortuary picking out a freaking coffin. And that's not what you want to be doing. Trust me, people. You don't want to be doing that.
That's one advantage of doing the pre-planning. With my daughter-in-law, she was stepping away from the church that she had grown up in.
What church did she go up?
She grew up in the LDS church, and her family, their neighbors are some of the people that are in high ranking up in the Apostles' Quorum, the Quorum of the 12 or whatever it is. So she was stepping away from the church, and because my son had lost his dad a few weeks before turning 15, they were having conversations on their road trips when they were moving to Colorado. And she had some health issues like asthma, and she'd had hepatitis A, recovered, and she had some allergies. And so when she got sick, they went to the hospital. The hospital sent them home. The next day, she wasn't feeling well. She didn't get out of bed at all. The next morning, she woke up. She told my son, "I can't breathe." And she thought it was an allergy attack. So she first tried her EpiPen. And then that didn't help. So she tried her inhaler. And while my son was getting dressed to take her back to the hospital, she lost consciousness. So he was doing CPR and calling the paramedics. The paramedics were able to get a pulse again and put her in the hospital, put her in the ambulance, but she was DOA by the time they got to the hospital. And they worked for 20 minutes on her before they
pronounced her.
But her family, being the faith that they are, were like, "We want a funeral." And Stormy was like, "That's not what she wanted."
Yeah.
And so they're like, "We'll pay for it," because there was nothing in writing. And so they brought the body back here, and they were like, "We want a church service," and he was like, "That's not what she wanted." But and even though he was her husband, he didn't feel like he had a lot of ground to stand on because they didn't know the conversations that had been happening.
Yeah.
So they compromised. They did a service at the mortuary, and then after the service, with her viewing full service, and then they took her to be cremated, and then they brought the ashes back to the families. But he said they wanted, the family prayer, the opening prayer, the closing prayer, plan of salvation kind of conversation. He's like, "That's not what she wanted. We're going to do an open mic where people can tell stories about her." And he's like, "You can have your family prayer, you can have your closing prayer, but I want my mom to call in the elements in place of where you would put the and they were like, "That's witchcraft." No, really, it's not. And So on Christmas morning, he woke up to a text from her saying, we feel like we want a more traditional service. So after the viewing, we're going to take our people, our family, our friends, or whatever, and go to the church down the road and have a real service. And you guys can do whatever you're doing in the mortuary. And that took like the pallbearers. That took a couple of pallbearers. It took the vocalists that they had. And so like we're circling, scrambling to put together a service for her. And it was crazy that you would have to plan that for someone so young.
Yeah.
But they had conversations, but because they didn't have it in writing, he didn't have anything that said, look, this is really what she wanted. They were like, we know that she's more into that, but this is what we want. And so I think at most any stage, you should be having conversations. And when you start to have conversations, then you should also start working on documentation.
Yeah, I totally agree.
One of my death doula colleagues, she is a birth doula. And she became a death doula after she lost her son at 6 months old. And I thought, oh my gosh, when I was pregnant with my first son, I was life-flighted from St. Mark's to the University of Utah because of all the complications I was having. It never occurred to me that I should have had a death plan. But that is one of the points in our lives where we're at most risk. And so I really think on August 19th at the Conjuring Tree, we're doing a Craft Your Path class, and we're going to discuss death doulas. What are we, but when do you need us? When should you be having a conversation with a death doula? What about when your kids are little? What about when you first get married? What about when you have children? When you have a life change, a life stage, that's a time to review your investments. That's also a time to review your death plan.
See, every year, like clockwork, I'm checking my car insurance rates. Like checking your phone plans, all that. That's when I update like my wishes. Like, did something change over the year? Or is still?
You're probably more prepared than
I am
most
not
people.
because I made a joke with my roommate because he sent me something. I was like, shit, I have to change the beneficiary because I'll be damned if that person gets my life insurance. But that's something I have put off. That's something I do have to address. And yeah.
But the fact that you thought about that, the fact that you know that who your beneficiary is like progress, because there are some people that don't pay attention to those things.
Yeah. And like, that person's no longer in my life. You can get that out. So transitioning it back, did you experience anything, did you have a knowing, like, within hours that your spouse was going to pass? Did you have an inner knowing? Did you feel anything physical in your body? Because this is all for all the widowers out there.
I do feel like I knew, but I was too close to be willing to accept it. It's like when I was signing the documents for the surgery, when they came out from the surgery, they're like, he died on the table 3 times, but we were able to revive him, and he's in the room, and it was like, only one person an hour for 10 minutes can go in to see him. And so we kind of rotated through all of the family. And I had a great support system. I had an aunt who showed up with food for everybody. And I had a coworker that brought blankets. and pillows and all of that, and like all of my family was there. And I remember walking out of the room when I finally decided I was ready to leave. And my first thought was, who's going to help me think? Because he was the one that was my sounding board. He was the one that had that different perspective. And I remember I was like, who's going to help me think? How am I supposed to do this? When my grandmother passed away, I knew down to the hour when she was going to die. I remember my aunt sending a text and saying, she's actively dying. If anybody wants to come and see her. And I was like, and I turned around to my boss and I said, she's going to die in the next 2 hours. And he said, do you need to go? And I said, no. Her physical body is what's dying. Her spirit's already been gone. I think Dan, I think I knew and I felt it. I just was too close to it to accept it until the work had been done. And then the night after the funeral, when everybody was finally going about their business and I was alone for the first time, that's when I think I felt it. Like I allowed myself to feel it. Because before that I was just working through the plan.
I like to hear about everybody's experience. Mine, I woke up that morning, I looked over. He had a cat laying on him, a little baby kitten. And I knew he was going to be gone. Like I could feel like his energy flowing out of my body, like shooing away. And I started making phone calls like to his family. I was like, if you want to say goodbye to your son, I feel he's going to pass. But one of the things that happened to me, and I still somewhat question it, but I don't, is I know what was going on, but I saw him sit up and he asked me a question. And it was clear as a bell. And I answered it. And then I held his hand and I watched him take his final breaths. But with that, it was like, was that his soul that I was seeing? Or was it his physical body? And that was something I wrestled with for like 2-3 years after his death. And sometimes I flip-flop still. I believe I got to see his soul.
I do too. What was the question that he asked you?
He asked me if it was okay for him to leave. And I busted down in tears after he passed. I just sat in the corner of my closet and cried. As people just showed up.
I remember when I got home from the hospital after Dan died, I made phone calls and I went and I dealt with neighbors and all of those things. And I remember everybody was trying to like, you need to quit being hostess. You need to quit like trying to, and I feel like I was trying to make sure everybody else was okay.
That's how I was after the first year after he died.
I was that way the first day, the day he died. I was that way, trying to be like the hostess and keep everybody. And I remember even after his funeral, and we were doing the lunch thing. I was doing the exact same thing. And finally someone's like, when was the last time you sat down and ate? When was the last time you just sat instead of trying to like make sure everybody, and it wasn't, like I said, until I got home and everyone was finally gone that I finally was like, okay, now it's just me. I was lucky that my oldest child was 16 and my youngest was about to turn 15, and so instead of feeling like Dan and I were the team, the unit, I started to include my boys in decisions, and I used to always tell them, my vote counts as 2, but you guys still get input. And that was how I got through a lot of the stuff that happens in that first year or 2. Was feeling like I had a support system.
Yeah, I didn't have support. Nope. I was the woman that was trying to make the first Christmas without the son, their father, okay, the Mother's Day, the birthdays.
Did his family blame you?
I'm going to say his ex-wife and daughter. There's some blame there, yes. Because there was a statement made to me that if he truly loved me, he wouldn't be drinking. Mm-hmm. And you can make him stop. And you know what? Looking back, yeah, I'm going to say a family member of his made a comment too. That if I would just throw him out of my life as like an ultimatum to make him stop drinking.
That is one of the hardest things to deal with when you not only have your own survivor's guilt, but then you have people that are also laying blame. I was lucky that that my in-laws still were like, you're still part of this family. You've been part of this family for 20 years. That's not going to change. It changed when they died because my sister-in-laws were not. As soon as my father-in-law passed away, I was a stranger. I wasn't family anymore.
I would say the first year I was somewhat family, but it started to break down in the sense that I was speaking up. Like, I'm not the caretaker of his grave. Sorry. You want certain things placed on it and removed, you need to take care of it, because the spiritual part of me started coming through, and I'm like, he is in the house. Yeah. He doesn't need to be recognized at the grave site. Nope, he's hanging out. I mean, he makes himself known even to this day. Like, his scent is marijuana. And I'll be like, it stinks like marijuana in my bedroom. There's no rhyme or reason why there should be there, but
My mother-in-law tries to throw guilt on me for not, leaving flowers at his grave. It's like, he's not there, and if you feel like you want to tend to that headstone, you go ahead. And I thought if I believed he was there, if I was at, I could go there. I live in the same town. I can go there anytime I want to. I don't need a special day to do it. So that, and she and I had a breakdown in our relationship the day that I turned around and said, he's not, and she's like, Dan would let me have that, and you know it. And I was like, he's not here, and I'm the one that you have to deal with.
Yeah. I think it's more, and this is with everyday life and normal, like, friends and not just family, is once you find that voice and you find your power and you start speaking, people are like disappearing. And it's okay, because it's like, you only want to be in my life if you have some control over it. And that's not me.
I think that is very true. And yes, I agree. It happens in everyday life. And one of and 2026 has been a year of learning to take up my space, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah. It is. So what are some signs that your husband is there for you since his death? Because I get this from a lot of people. Like, I have a friend who lost her husband last year, and I feel like I had to go through what I went through with James to help her a few years later with her husband and like his illness and stuff. Because when they assigned hospice, I was like, you need to get on and pick a funeral home. You need to figure out how he wants it. And she's like, no, I'll put it off. I was like, no, because if he goes, it's the last thing you want to be trying to figure out. Trust me.
I agree.
She'll have dreams, but she writes it off.
Oh no. So my personal gnosis is that when they come to, when you have a random memory pop up, or you have a dream, that's their visitation. But in the case of Dan, when I get in the car, there are certain songs that, anything by AC/DC pops on. Today it was a song by Diamond Rio called One More Day, which, that is actually an entry that I put in the journal that I kept, where I was having conversations with him. Was what would I do if I had one more day? And so that song is meaningful for me. So when I hear it, I know that's him. And the smell of campfire without any particular reason, and then nickels and pennies together. When I find them, like in a parking lot or the bleachers at the football field or whatever, nickels and pennies. So yeah, that's and then the journal helped me a lot because I was able to write what I was feeling or what I was thinking, and then I would have the knowing of this is the response.
Yeah.
I would have the knowing of, I'm sorry. And I didn't leave you without resources. And, and so those are the signs that I have that he's still around. And in October, it'll be 17 years that he's been gone, which will be actually the number of years that we were married, but we lived together for 3 years before that. So I've almost reached a point where I've had more years, adult years, without him. I'm approaching that point of more adult years without him than I had with him, and that is surreal to me because I feel like he was so much a part of who I was. And even now, the things that I've learned and the things that I've done, I wouldn't have done if he were still living. I've taken trips that I wouldn't have taken. I developed gifts that I wouldn't have done if he were here. And so I still feel like
he was a piece of your mosaic.
Yes.
Masterpiece. Yeah.
So I mentioned with my grandmother, I will have memories of her pop into my head. And with her, it is I feel her around a lot when I'm doing things with my grandson, and it will bring up memories of things I did with her. And then, like I said, the smell of white cake.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the key things to recognize the people, when your loved ones, when they're around you, are to take a pause, take a minute to think about, like, what is your most core memory or your most precious memory with them? What's the strongest memory that you have? And what are the elements of that? What are what are the sights, the sounds, the everything else? And then look for those things as usually a sign that they're around. And then, like I said, when memories pop in and you have dreams, that's them actually visiting.
Very cool. Yeah. Very nice. We're an hour and 40 minutes into it.
Oh my goodness.
So if people want to get a hold of you, how can they find you again?
So right now, my primary social media is Facebook. So it's Melissa Joy Thomas or Melissa Joy Death Doula. And then you can always find me at the Death Cafes. But I also read at the Conjuring Tree for the Psychic Fairs, the Psychic Saturday and the Psychic Sunday.
Do you know what dates you're going to be there in August?
I do know that I am going to be there.
Do you take clients outside of the Conjuring Tree?
I do. And so I will be there on August 8th for the Psychic Saturday. And then on August for
What's the class you're doing on August 19th? I just saw it at 11 a.m.
August,
Dreams. That's what it is.
Actually, that one's not mine. That one is Jennifer's.
Oh.
The class that I am doing is actually on August 19th, and it is the Craft Your Path class. So it's one of the Wednesday night classes, the free classes, and we're going to talk about what are death doulas for folks that have never heard the term before, and when should you be working with one. And then probably October-ish, I'm actually looking at a class called Let's Build Your Death Plan.
I love that. I love that.
And then the Death Cafe in Tooele in August is actually on August 11th. So at the Tooele Marketplace, you'll find me there from 6 to 8. And then the Death Cafe at Mill Creek in August is on the 26th of August. And that is at the Lotus Center, which is off of 7th East and about 45th South. And it is from 6 to 8 as well. And again, you get food, you just have conversation with people in a safe space to be able to talk about death and dying and grief.
I love it. I love it. Very beneficial.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions that you have? You want to kill it? Let's kill it.
No, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, I think it's an amazing, interesting topic. And I feel like a lot of people overlook it because they don't want to talk about it.
I feel like there's a lot of fear. And like I said, in my opinion, when you talk about it, it takes some of that fear away. But I know that there are certain people that feel like if they talk about it, they actually bring it about. But it's kind of the inescapable.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's make it normal. Let's make sure that you have as much say in that process. And that you leave your family with the gift of being able to grieve and not have to worry about
Running around.
Yes.
Making decisions. But yeah, I knew you, when I spoke to you, I knew you were a death doula, but I didn't know anything about the Death Cafe.
So,
And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But everybody, she's had a long day at work. We appreciate you. When you find this, if you do have any additional questions that you would like to submit, go ahead and put them in the comments, or you can email me at rc77oracle@yahoo.com, and we'll get the questions answered for Melissa. Or either now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. So I have a question for you.
Sure.